After a long wait, Palworld Xbox Dedicated servers are finally here for everybody to use. What that means is that you can now create your own private or public multiplayer server that people can join whenever they like, rather than having to rely on playing one of your friends' saved games only when they are online. Today, I'm going to explain exactly what that means, how you can set up your own server on your own PC, and how you can get a server hosted by a third-party provider. So this feature has actually been available on the Xbox Insider program for a little while now, but now it's fully rolled out, we can all access it, and we also have a lot more options now. There are basically three main ways you can create your own server, one of which is installing and running a server on your own PC. Another is by hiring a Palworld dedicated server from a third-party hosting service. And the third is by hiring a virtual machine on which you install a Palworld server yourself and host it that way. There are pros and cons to each method. Hosting a server on your own PC is going to be completely free, but it requires a small amount of technical know-how, some port forwarding, which most Xbox players know can be an absolute nightmare, and it also relies on your PC's specs and power, and also on your PC being turned on with the server running whenever you want to use it. Hiring a pre-made Palworld server from a third-party hosting site will cost you some money per month, but it's by far the easiest method and usually requires little to no technical knowledge to set up. On top of that, these servers will be live night and day, or whenever you choose to have it turned on, without you needing to have your PC left on all the time. So if you want to host your own server locally, there's a guide available for that on the tech.palworldgame.com website, which I will link to below. It talks you through the whole process pretty clearly, giving options for installing via Steam, with Steam CMD, or with Steam CMD on Linux. Steam is probably the simplest option. So if you want to host a dedicated server via Steam, you just need to go into your Steam library where you have Palworld and make sure you've got tools ticked here in your library, and you should be able to find Palworld dedicated server. Click here and download and install that. Once you have, just launch the server once and then turn it off again. This is going to populate some files for us. You can see this window opening here. This means the server is now active. We can just close that again. And what we want to do is go to the properties for this, and you can go to installed files and browse up here. And this is going to show you the files that are installed for this server. What we want to do is open this default Palworld settings folder here and copy everything. You can see me copying here. Close this and then go to Pal, saved, config, Windows Server, and scroll down to Palworld settings. Open this in a text editor and copy and paste everything into there. So this is pretty much the same as doing it for PC, but something you need to change for hosting one for Xbox is this line here. You see it says allow connect platform equals Steam. You need to change Steam so it says Xbox. And in this folder as well, you can change values to configure your server's settings. You can see the daytime, night speed, these kinds of things you're used to seeing in game, the player server maximum number. And you can also set your server name here. You see default Palworld server. We can change that to Ben's server or whatever. You can set the server description, server password. If you leave server password blank, then it won't have a password. Anyone can join. And you can set an admin password for your server as well. You don't really need to change anything else in that. You can just save that and close it, and then go back to Steam and do launch your dedicated server. It's going to ask you the first time you open this to whether you want to play a dedicated server or open start as a community server. You want to select community server. That means it's going to appear on the community server list in game when you're trying to join with Xbox. So you can do that, click play, and then your server is up and running. Then you should be able to just open Palworld, go to join multiplayer game and community servers, and search for your server name there and join it. Keep in mind when you search for server names, it is case sensitive. And one other thing you'll need to do before your friends will be able to join is set up port forwarding for port 8211 as default, as UDP. And if you want a full guide on how to set up port forwarding and also installing Palworld servers in general, then check out Swashed's excellent video down below. He goes through port forwarding in much greater detail and talks through that. I definitely recommend having a look at that if you need a little bit of advice there. Frustratingly for me though, even after setting up port forwarding and rebooting everything, I still couldn't join my own server. It showed up in the list, but every time I tried to join it, I kept getting a timeout error. I've no idea why. Probably port forwarding playing up or something weird on my IP that's breaking it. I've been trying for ages and not being able to get anywhere with that, sadly. I know this is working for plenty of people, but for me and a few others, it just doesn't really seem to want to work. If anyone has any solutions or similar issues, then let me know in the comments and maybe we can figure it out. That said, personally, I would probably just pay to hire one anyway, both for the simplicity of it and also so I don't have to have it running on my own PC all the time. There are tons of options out there for third-party hosting right now, and no one is the clear best, but I can give you my take on a few I've looked at today and give you some names to check out. Some of the hosting companies I've seen so far advertising Palworld Xbox servers are Berrybyte, Nitrado, GTXGaming, Gportal, Shockbyte, and GameHostBros, to name but a few. I'm not affiliated with any of these, by the way. Some of them have approached me, but I'm just keeping this nice and neutral so you can figure it out yourselves. I have, however, used my own money and rocked up small servers on GTX and Berrybyte, and they both work fine for me for Xbox and were very cheap and had good interfaces. I felt the performance on Berrybyte was slightly better. Shockbyte I also bought one on, but it didn't work with Xbox. It didn't give you an option to be able to change the Allow Connect platform INI to be Xbox instead of Steam. That may change over time. And Gportal, again, it wouldn't let me change my PC server to Xbox. They didn't have Xbox ones available currently. Nitrado and GameHostBros I've not tested, but they do advertise Xbox servers. They're a bit more expensive. Nitrado is just always expensive. GameHostBros is quite expensive, but it has good spec stuff. It doesn't have a slot amount like the other ones does, so they start at $20 a month. So if you're just going to play with a couple of you, it's not really very good value unless you want really, really good performance on your server. But if you're going for a bigger server, they might be a good shout. Of all of those, Berrybyte, GTX, and Gportal were the only ones that offered packages for just 4-slot only servers, ranging from $5.50 a month on GTX to about $7 a month on Berrybyte. So one of those seems best at the moment if you want a very small server, and if you want a bigger server, you'll need to spend more as more processing power will be needed. It's worth noting the technical requirements given by Palworld for servers do list that 8GB is the minimum required memory. It says it's bootable, but increases the possibility of server crashes due to out of memory. 16GB is sort of in the middle, and recommended for larger is 32GB. This doesn't, however, mention number of players, so it's probably reasonable to assume that for maybe 2 to 4 players, 8GB or so would be adequate. If you're going to have a medium capacity server, maybe 16, and if you're expecting to hit the player cap, then you might want up nearer that 32GB amount. So that's definitely worth keeping in mind when you are looking at server options. Some of these offer very, very cheap packages, but the less money you give them, the less performance you are going to have. So if you fork out just a few bucks for your server and you're wondering why it's laggy and not performing well, then you might need to go with a hosting provider that offers some more performance and spend a few more dollars, and you might be able to get rid of those issues. The last option, if you're relatively tech savvy, is to rent a virtual machine somewhere and then install the server yourself on it. So this is basically hiring a server, not a Palworld server. You're just hiring a server somewhere that you could install anything onto you wanted to remotely, and then you're going to load it up and you're going to install a Palworld server on it, just like you would have done if you're doing it locally on your PC. So it's a little bit technical, not super technical, but there is a little bit there. You won't have a nice clean interface with little selectable options like you might do on Berrybyte or Nitrado or Gportal, but these will be more cost effective than paying a third party to essentially be a middleman to hosting your server. If it's just a small server, I don't know if I'd really bother, but certainly if you're hosting a big server with lots of RAM and lots of players, then it's probably going to save you quite a bit of money to do this yourself. Let me know in the comments your experience with hosting providers. It'd be really useful to hear feedback from people who have tried different ones and had good and bad experiences, and maybe we might be able to figure out which some of the best providers are and who's offering good value and a good balance with performance as well. My Berrybyte one seemed to run a little bit better than my GTX one. I was happy with the performance of my 4-slot Berrybyte server, but it was just a brand new save with not much going on and only me connected, so it wasn't really pushing the boundaries as much of a test, but it did seem like a reasonable starting point, and you can then go and upgrade some of these smaller package servers to be a little bit more powerful if you feel you need that. If you do use a Berrybyte server, I found today I had to go to the Startup tab on the left-hand side of their dashboard, and in that you can set the server name and server password, as well as your admin password. And then I also needed to go to Files under Server Management, and then in the files go to PAL, Saved, Config, and then Linux Server, just like when we set up the server earlier. Find the Palworld settings.ini file, and in that change the Allow Connect Platform setting to equal Xbox instead of Steam, and save that. Make sure any changes you make to the ini file you do when your server is stopped, by the way. So that's everything for today. Hopefully you found something useful in there. If you did, then why not click like and subscribe to see more videos like this, and check out my other recent Palworld update videos covering all of the new content in the Sakurajima update and how to use it, including all of the best locations to find crude oil on the map, including the only place on the map where you can find 3 crude oil deposits within the space of 1 base. Thanks very much for watching. My name's Ben, we are the Beard Guys, and I'll see you next time.